The shadow in the old house. It was a dark and cold autumn night when Aaron, a curious and daring young man, arrived in a remote village known for its chilling legends. He had heard tales of the old Whitlock house that loomed over the edge of town, a place steeped in mystery and haunted whispers. Locals called it the shadowed house, warning that any who entered after midnight might never return. But Aaron was no stranger to ghost stories. As an amateur paranormal investigator, he prided himself on his courage and skepticism. When he heard about the old house from the locals, he saw it as an opportunity to uncover the truth behind the village's ghost stories. Determined to spend a night inside, he gathered his equipment: a flashlight, a small digital recorder, and his notebook. Ignoring the villagers' horrified looks, he set off toward the house. The path leading to Whitlock House was overgrown with tall, gnarled trees, their bare branches like skeletal fingers stretching toward the blackened sky. The wind whistled through the leaves, creating an eerie symphony that only grew louder as he approached the mansion. The house itself was massive, with cracked stone walls covered in ivy and shattered windows that looked like hollow, dead eyes. A chill ran down his spine as he approached the front door, but he shook it off, determined to prove that there was nothing to fear. The door creaked open as he pushed it, and a musty, stale smell filled the air. Dust coated everything, and faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors hung on the walls, their eyes following him as he stepped inside. A thick layer of silence enveloped the house, as if it were holding its breath. The first hour passed uneventfully. Aaron explored room after room, marveling at the decayed beauty of the house. He jotted down notes about strange sounds he thought he heard, a soft whisper here, a faint rustling there, but brushed them off as figments of his imagination. Then, at midnight, as he stepped into the main hall, his recorder flickered on by itself. It emitted a faint static noise, and then he heard something that made his blood run cold. A voice, soft and chilling, whispered, "You shouldn't be here." He whipped around, shining his flashlight, but found nothing but shadows. The voice faded, and the recorder returned to silence. His heart pounded, but his curiosity urged him to stay. He took a deep breath and decided to head upstairs, where, according to the local legends, the ghost of Lydia Whitlock was said to appear. The stairs creaked under his weight as he ascended, and the air grew colder with each step. At the top, he found himself in a long corridor lined with closed doors, each leading to rooms he hadn't yet explored. He hesitated, unsure of which room to enter, when a door at the far end of the hallway slowly swung open, as if inviting him inside. The room beyond was dimly lit, with only the moonlight streaming in through a broken window. It was a bedroom, untouched for years, with a large, dusty mirror facing the bed. As he stepped inside, he caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror. His heart raced as he turned to look, but there was no one there. He moved closer to the mirror, examining it closely, when suddenly a dark figure appeared behind him. It was a woman, her face obscured by shadows, her eyes hollow and empty. She wore a tattered dress, and her skin was pale, almost translucent. Aaron froze, unable to look away as she raised her hand and pointed at him, her mouth twisting into a sinister smile. "You're mine now," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. Before he could react, the door slammed shut, and a gust of icy wind swept through the room, extinguishing his flashlight. He was plunged into darkness, the only sound his own ragged breathing. Panic surged through him as he fumbled to turn his flashlight back on, but it refused to work. Then he heard her footsteps. Slow and deliberate, they echoed through the room, coming closer and closer. He backed away, pressing himself against the wall, But the footsteps didn't stop. He could feel her presence closing in on him, her cold breath brushing against his neck. Desperately, he reached for his recorder, hoping to capture some proof of the ghostly encounter, but the device had been shattered in his hand, the screen cracked and lifeless. He was truly alone with the spirit. In that moment, he understood the villagers' warnings. This was no ordinary haunting. The spirit of Lydia Whitlock was not merely an apparition. She was something darker, something malicious. He had trespassed into her domain, and now she intended to keep him there. Summoning every ounce of courage, he darted toward the door, yanking it open and stumbling into the hallway. But the house seemed to shift around him, the walls narrowing, the floors creaking beneath him as if they were alive. He ran blindly through the corridor, the woman's laughter echoing in his ears, growing louder and more frenzied. Just as he reached the stairs, the floor gave way beneath him, and he plummeted into darkness. He landed hard on a cold stone floor, his body bruised and aching. He struggled to stand, realizing he was now in the basement of the house, a place he hadn't explored. The basement was a maze of stone walls and narrow passageways, lit only by the faint glow of the moon filtering through a small, cracked window. Shadows danced on the walls, and he could feel her presence lurking in the darkness, watching him, waiting. In a panic, he stumbled through the passageways, desperately searching for an exit. But every turn led him deeper into the labyrinth, as if the house itself were toying with him. His breaths came in short, ragged gasps, and his vision blurred as exhaustion set in. He could no longer tell if he was hearing her footsteps or if they were just echoes in his mind. Finally, he came to a small wooden door at the end of the passageway. He pushed it open, hoping for an escape, but found himself back in the main hall, staring at the same portraits that had greeted him when he first entered the house. Only now, the faces in the portraits had changed. Their eyes were wide with fear, their mouths open in silent screams. And there, in the center of the hall, stood Lydia, her dark figure looming, her eyes blazing with an unnatural light. "You wanted to meet me," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "Now, you will stay forever." The door behind him slammed shut, and the last sound he heard was her laughter, echoing through the walls as the darkness swallowed him whole.